time and everything else when you're on the road quite a lot. I forgot all the extra work that you need to do when you're constantly either on a plane or sitting in a waiting room or a Qantas Club.
And it's all the other bits as well, like family. And,
I know.
You know, all your extracurriculars outside of work. It's interesting, isn't it?
It has. Well, this week I had this conversation at gym because we have these little competitions at gym in terms of how many points you get essentially on them, is the thing we track. And I'm like, I'm going to have to work like extra hard on the days that I'm at gym because I'm only doing 2 to 3 days a week instead of 6 days a week. It's what I used to do. And so it's a significant shift and change in the way that I'm feeling also, I have to say, because when I'm traveling, I just don't feel like getting up in the morning. I just find the travel I get tired with the travel. I think I'm just getting old, right?
I totally get it.
I know.
And it's really tricky, isn't it? Trying to find time for all the things.
It's all the things and balancing everything. And I guess that's what it comes down to, isn't it? Balance. I was away in Rockhampton Monday, Tuesday this week, and we had to make it Monday, Tuesday because we had my stepchild's birthday yesterday. And so we had a big party. We were going to have people at the house, and then we decided we'll go out for dinner. And then we had 14 people overrun this very cute little Japanese restaurant in Mount Gravatt. It was amazing food. And it was only seats for like 40 people, and we had half the restaurant.
Well, happy birthday to Zali. That's special. Oh, Mars. Happy birthday, Mars.
Yeah, it was a good day. They're officially 13, so I'm like now the stepmom to a teenager. Challenging, but that's okay, right? We've got this.
I was a terrible challenge as a teenager.
Don't tell Mars that.
And I have to say that my daughter was just the easiest, cruisiest teenager. Yeah. So I'm just thinking you don't always get what you expect, Jenny.
No, you don't.
I think it's just going to cruise.
Yes, hopefully. Let's fingers crossed, right?
Yes.
Everybody wish me luck. I'm excited about today's topic because, well, we're talking about money and pricing, and you know how much I love talking about pricing. But before we talk about pricing, how has your week been? Because you've had been crazy busy. You're on your travels and you're back again. And how are things going with you?
Things have been good, thanks. I also ran my meetup this week, the online, a Positive Passionate Businesswoman, which was just wonderful to connect with so many amazing women and great things going on with lots of people at the moment. And, you know, Australia is in an interesting stage coming. I'm not definitely going to say post-COVID because we're definitely still in the midst of it, but coming out of the, you know, challenges that we were facing with the lockdowns and things like that. And of course, elections. And of course, in my area, the massive issues with the flood recovery, et cetera. So it's definitely interesting times and intriguing. I'm having lots of conversations with different business leaders around recovery and again that interesting word from 2 years ago of pivoting and how businesses can pivot in this time because not all have survived in the way that they had thought they might, but that doesn't mean they haven't survived. They just haven't survived in a particular way. So, looking for new opportunities and where to head and how to head there. So,
and it's really an evolution, isn't it, though? I mean, we talked about pivot before, and that's that kind of I need to be able to move, but I feel like we've gone past pivot and we're now in evolution. And I think that might be my word for the year, for the rest of the year, is talking about evolution of how we continue to grow and change and adopt and I guess respond to what's happening in the world around us. I think that's kind of a nice way of looking at rather than this pivoting where I just feel like I'm constantly moving. It's actually an evolution.
Yeah, I think that's really, really great. And I think, as we often discuss, evolving is so important, and choosing new directions and looking for opportunities without jumping on all the shiny things, but, you know, making some really solid decisions about where do I want to grow and in what direction do I want to head, et cetera. It's good. I have to 100%. Say, for the first time in a really long time, just probably the last couple of years, I've just felt so relieved at the programs that I have. They just feel really solid. It feels like I don't need to be looking for something different or a new way of doing something or to introduce it or whatever. And other than the things we have been working on forever behind the scenes, but that's not new. It's just long processes. Yeah. But feels really good, to be at that stage. So yeah, long may that last until the next thing comes along. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So
it's an interesting, because I've been talking with a number of clients in the last few weeks, well, actually last few months, about pricing. And I particularly, for one, like pricing to be changed around the new financial year. I think, of course, anyone can change their pricing anytime they like, but I think we need to know what's going to be going on. We need to know what to expect. And therefore, if you lead up to it and you give warning, etc., then, and everybody expects something like that around the new financial year. So for me, this is just the perfect time to be talking about it. We're 5-6 weeks out from it, and ready to go. What's your thoughts on that?
It's a very good question, and my favorite answer, it depends. So really, I think it depends on how your business is structured. So something like your program, which is a perennial program, which is continuous, like people can continue to work and continue to keep joining your programs at any time, then I think choosing a time of year where you're doing that price increase is really appropriate, because then people can plan for it, right? And having that communication beforehand to say, look, in the next 4 to 5 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks, we're going to actually be doing a shift, and this is why, because we know that pricing has changed. Like with inflation, I know we've been very lucky in the last couple of years, but even while inflation is low, other prices actually still go up in some of the world. So we're looking, remember, inflation is an average price increase across the market. It's not just in one particular area. So we have to be mindful of how what it costs us to do work. And I know I'm getting emails from, all the providers that we work with and all the tech providers we work with saying there's a price increase coming. So we have to make a decision as whether we wear that price or whether we pass that price increase on to our clients. So I think an annual one is really good. Something like my program, though, which is a fixed fee program for 6 months, where you come to the retreat and then there's 6 months of coaching, my price increases would be more appropriate to be doing at the end of each cycle, because then we basically run through a client through that program, and it also provides an opportunity to bring people in to say, this is the last time it's going to be priced at this, and the next one will be more than that. And that actually allows us to do that kind of step change and evolution as we build the product. The other way in terms of pricing, though, is just that kind of demand pricing. If you actually have something that you're selling that is in great demand, and you see the market shifting and the value position of that market changing, then that might be the right time to change your price. And that could be a March or a June or a September or an April, because it might just be when the demand is changing, or you've been able to reposition your product as a luxury item, or reposition your product as high volume, low cost product, whatever it might be. So I think you have to look at your business structure. You have to look at what you're trying to achieve through your business, and then look at your customers and say, how do I marry those 3 things together to get that sweet spot of pricing?
Agree, absolutely. And the ones I'm thinking of particularly of late, are all have a product-based businesses. And so there's been big questions around what kind of, should you just do it and then let them notice it or not notice it, hopefully, or should you share about it? And I'm like, I think it's really important to be transparent, but also I think it's a great opportunity to connect with people and say, particularly in a product-based way, these products, your favorite products are only going to be available at this price for X amount of time. So you might want to stock up or buy another or whatever in that lead up to. It's obviously way more complicated for those that are wholesale people, because those price ups have much bigger effects on, flow on effects for their stock, etc. But in terms of service-based businesses, how do you feel, for example, if you go to a naturopath appointment today and it costs you $150, and then you booked another appointment for in 4 weeks' time, and you turn up and it's $180, for example? Do you feel like, should you have got a newsletter? To be told? Should you have been what kind of warning do you think you'd like to receive?
It's such a great question. And I guess my response to that is saying the answer is always yes. Always communicate with the clients that you have. If you've got new clients and you're changing your pricing on your website and somebody new is coming to you, then a shift from 150 to 180 might be perfectly fine because no one's really seen the 150 beforehand. But if you've got a customer that's been loyal to you and coming to you regularly, particularly in those naturopathy and kind of wellness industry where there's a regular appointment often that happens, it's so important to communicate because that could change your volume and your regularity of clients. Like some people, if someone's going to a naturopath, they've budgeted 2 or 3 sessions over a 2 or 3 month period. They know how much that costs. To up your price by 25% actually has the potential to reduce the number of times that individual sees you or expand their cadence out. So it's every 4 weeks instead of every 3 weeks. So one of the things we need to look at when we're looking at pricing, and that I always recommend, is what is the flow-on effect of that pricing? Why are you changing the price? And the question is, I want to increase my revenue. Well, okay, let's look at the big picture of that and say, is it a $30 pay increase? Or do we increase it by $10 and we do a $10 increase every 6 months over time, which doesn't change the time or the cadence of your clients coming to you, doesn't change the perception of your service to the clients, and then you actually still get your revenue growth over time without damaging your impact. However, 10%, 5%, the challenge with that is if you don't communicate to your loyal customers why that's important, then they're going to actually say, well, this is inappropriate. Like, I've been working with you for 10 years and all of a sudden your price has doubled. And without any warning, I've come in today to put my credit card down and now you're asking me to pay this much more. 100% you need to communicate that. Otherwise you will lose loyal customers.
Yeah, I totally agree. And a lot of people choose their services or their service providers based on cost. Yep. If you're looking for a psychologist, you'll ring around. Some are $250, some are $180 or whatever. And depending on your budget and where you're choosing to allocate your money, it will really make a big difference. So to get a surprise increase like that, you're not only, clearly possibly causing a little distress, but also possibly really turning them off. So it's not been a nice experience for them, and then they're gone. And of course, they're not going to share that being a good experience from the first session that they had with you.
And I think it comes down to, why do we want to increase prices? Some people just say, well, I'm increasing my prices because I'm just worth more. And I'm like, that's cool. Like, if you think you're worth more, that is awesome. But let's play that out and see what it sits in the market. And I think that's the conversation. I remember having this conversation years ago about someone who believed that the pricing that they were being charged for a speaker gig was ridiculous, and how dare you only charge for this amount of money, because they believed they were worthy of a higher fee. And in some cases, the knowledge they were sharing probably was worthy. But if they don't have the following, they don't have the connection, they don't have the draw card or the status or the kind of position in the market, then you can't command a price just even if you think you're worthy. And so I might say that I'd like to be like Lisa Nichols and get paid $25,000 for a 4-hour coaching session or an 8-hour coaching session. That is my goal, baby. But you know what? Maybe it's not the time for me to do that. Maybe there's an increment between where I want to get to and now. And so what is the market? So it's all about saying, why are you doing it? What is the market position at the moment? What is your position in that market? And how do you actually make alignment across all those aspects? Because really good pricing changes are actually when you get an alignment out of what it's costing, what the value is, but also what the perceived value and worth of it is. And that's what we need to align. And we sometimes forget that.
I'm so glad you just said that perceived value, but sorry, carry on.
No, yeah, that perceived value, because that's the thing is, I was looking at even simple things like cars, right? Major increases in cars. I bought my Everest earlier this year, and we looked at the new Everest because Michael's now decided he likes a Ford Everest, and so he's looking at maybe buying one. And so which I love. So when we're looking at the prices, we actually looked at the price of next year's model or the current model, and it's something like $400 difference. And so when you look at something like a big ticket item, that's something that you could probably add $2,000 or $3,000 every year, and it wouldn't change the perception of it. But what they recognize, they can't do that every year over time. They're better off keeping it within that kind of sweet spot of what it costs them. And then they know they get more purchases. So it's this kind of balance of around how do I position in the market? Whereas I wouldn't notice a $2,000 increase on a $70,000 car, really. Like, you're not going to notice that if you're looking at the market. I would notice a 15 or 20% increase on a $200 consultation, or a $50 consultation that goes from $50 to $75 or $50 to $65. That's still a big increase that can affect, because the perception may not align with what you think it's worth.
Absolutely. So perception is so great. So you cannot be charging top dollar, even when you are the most qualified or have an extraordinary amount of whatever behind you. But if no one knows that you exist, and if no one is getting the reasoning behind you, it's not sharing why you should be worthy of that, et cetera, then you definitely got a bit of a problem there. So I think that brings us back to, what do people know about you? How are you getting visible? What do people, and that doesn't mean, doing lives on Instagram or whatever. That's, what's your website telling us about you? So how professional is what you're presenting out there, and is it matching with what you're wanting to charge or what you believe you're worth, etc. So it's always interesting when people say to me, the website's irrelevant. My website's not irrelevant. I'm still going to charge $2,000 an hour or whatever. But yeah, it doesn't matter what that looks like. People know I'm good at what I do. It's like, how do they know you're good? How do they know that? So yeah, I'm not saying that the website's everything, but certainly it's part of the pieces of the puzzle that go together to be elevating you and saying where you stand in the marketplace.
I completely agree. I mean, we have to remember that we are a digital world. And yes, you might go to Facebook, or you might go to Insta, or you might go to LinkedIn or Twitter or whichever social media platform you're on. But your website is like your very detailed business capability statement or digital business card. And if you're trying to get a high ticket value, then you want to be able to display yourself and, as you said, professionalize your business online. So it can be a simple website, but as long as it's very clear about what your value is, it's very clear about what you're going to do, and it makes people feel safe, because price is connected to trust and safety as well. So if I'm paying $10,000 for a coach or $5,000 for a coach, and we want to know that we're in a safe pair of hands. So if we go into someone's website and it kind of looks a mess and you don't really know what they do and it hasn't been updated for 7 years, and you're like, what? You look at that and go, if you're not actually changing that, if you're not keeping up to date with your website or keeping up to date with sharing your information, what am I actually going to get from you? Am I going to get kind of the 10-year-old version of you versus the current version of you? And I think that's where we forget that, the website, I think, is still a critical aspect. Whether you want to Google my business website, whether you want a full-blown, self-built website, doesn't really matter, but it's making sure it matches your business, matches your industry, but important, matches your customers, right? We talk about this so often. It has to match what your customers expect.
Absolutely, it does. I couldn't agree more. One of my biggest issues I find in my business is only with the clients that are product-based, but no, that's not true. Even the service-based clients, we need decent photographs, right? So if it's a massive problem in my business, trying to explain to my clients how important those photographs are of their products, of their selves, of everything, then imagine how hard it is for the photographers trying to explain to people the importance of using their services, because at the end of the day, what you're presenting, and I certainly clients that say, I don't have the budget for the photos at the moment, so I'm just going to stick with what we've got or what we've done. It's like, oh, but actually your photos are probably the most important bit, because when it's only online, it's absolutely got to be it's the seller for you, isn't it? You're not picking it up in an actual shop. So it's the most vital part.
And again, photos build trust. When I go to a website and I see a photo that's grainy or looks like it's been photoshopped, my immediate reaction is, that's not what I'm going to get. I actually think this is a scam. I often look at websites and I will look at the quality of images of the product on that site. And if there's another product selling, if there's someone else selling the same product, I will go to the other person's website if the images look clean and original and don't look Photoshop, because then I feel more safe and value and trustworthy of that site to say, actually, that's good. Like, I can see what it looks like, and that's what I'm going to get. Because we have so many scam websites that exist, you can clone a website, you can copy images, and they're generally low resolution, they generally look grainy, and they look a bit dodgy, and the people's faces are a bit odd. You're like, oh, I don't think that's trustworthy. So your photos are building trust with your clients, and I think that's the connection, right? It's actually not just saying blue is blue and red is red, and you can actually see a really clear picture of the color, which is also really important. But if they're clean, really good, high quality images that I can look at it and go, I know exactly what I'm going to get. It looks reputable. And I know that if I press pay and I send you some money, in 3 to 5 days, I'm going to get what I asked for.
Absolutely. And you are so right. There are some dodgy websites out there with products that aren't legit, etc. And I've got a little tip. Many of you might know it, but if you don't, you're going to love it. If you find a product and you're like, I really want that, but is this really legit? Am I going to be scammed? You can save that image to your desktop, go to Google Photos, upload it, and it will tell you all the other places that photo is. Ooh. So then, straight away, is that actually the original source of that image. It's also a great one for those of you in business that are wanting to, or you find an image on Google that you'd really like to use, but you don't own it, do you? So you want to know, is it royalty free? Is it copyright free? Is it also available on a website like Unsplash or something? So you can put that image that that you're not sure if you can use, put it in there, and it'll show you where that original source is. So then also you could potentially use it and credit where it's come from, which is, obviously.
That's amazing.
So, that's a good little tip.
That is a really good
and we will. Another thing is around that photo topic and the just looking super professional, is that if all your images are stock photos, that's really obvious as well, straight off the bat.
Yeah.
So no worries at all to use stock photos, but if they all are, then it's just not going to look very personal either. So I know you've, Jenni, had some amazing photo shoots, and your photos are just glorious. Every time I see those photos and I think, oh, I've got to do it again. I'm going to do another photo shoot, because mine are quite few and far between.
I need to do another one too.
But it's even if you've only got a few that you can use, which I do, then you can just mix them up and use them over and over if you need to. But at least people see you. At least they know what to expect. And I was just having this great discovery Zoom with a company yesterday that's all about data and electrical, but for in commercial situations. And we were looking at their website there, and I said, I can't see the team though. The team are going to be coming into my it's also residential but for new builds. And I said, I want to see who I'm going to be working with. I want to see that you look trustworthy, and all that kind of thing. And I just think it gives us a nice feeling about that's the such and such crew or whatever. Yes, I definitely feel there's one thing that you do today, it's go and put a photo of yourself on your about page on your website. And why don't you put a post up on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn with a photo of yourself and saying, hey, thanks all for following me. If you're new around here, you probably don't, probably haven't heard my story. And then, repost your story. I think it's a good one. Anyway, I'm not sure that's necessarily exactly related to upping your pricing, but it
could be.
The trust factor, the know, like, and trust. So back to specifically around pricing. So I said right at the beginning, I really like to do it on July 1st. I feel like it's a good lead up to it, etc. But there are actually parts of my pricing that I change at different times through the year too. Like one of them I just upped 2 months ago, and I did let people know that side of it was going to be increasing. Well, not the whole world know, but certainly the ones that needed to know. So I totally am in agreement with you that it's going to be relevant to so many different aspects of your business and when's the right time. But let's just talk for a moment, just briefly, about Oh, go ahead.
Just one more, and this may be what you're going to ask, but I just want to say, if you've got a pricing if you do a project pricing, for example, and you want to increase your price, but you're worried about your hourly rate or something, if you have inputs into your pricing, so what I mean by that is if you're providing, we've got a client that we both work with who actually calculates a quote for the pricing based on a series of inputs. So if your inputs include product, some physical labor, third-party subscriptions, or whatever it is, you can actually look at changing elements of that pricing that will have a profound impact at the end. So let's use an example. You sell, I'm going to use the one where we know fabric by the meter. You could up your fabric by the meter by 50 cents per meter, which doesn't seem like a lot, but over time when you're selling volume, 50 cents becomes quite a significant impact, but the client won't notice. They're not going to notice the difference between $18 and $18.50 a meter. In the same way, if your price to do a particular service goes from $21 to $24 or $22, that particular item on the overall quote isn't going to actually start, scream at the end user or the client. But what it does is if you're doing that over every one of your clients and getting $2 or $3 or $5 here and there, that actually creates your volume effect. So you only need to maybe change your prices by 1 or 2 or 3% to actually have a really significant effect at the other end. So this is why it's really important to break down your pricing and see where could I actually make a movement where it's important and going to give me more value, but it's not going to necessarily scare the client, particularly repeat clients, but I can sustain that price increase. So yeah, so changing a per meter item or a per item thing by 50 cents or 25 cents when people are buying 10 isn't going to be a huge thing because they're looking at the individual price before they look at the total price. So now you're saying.
No, totally. And so I think that's a great little segue to say next week or our next session, let's continue on the topic of pricing and look at that next part of it, which is how much should I increase by? Yeah. And I think that's wonderful that you brought up that topic around you can increase this bit here, which will affect this, this, and this. So we can look at different examples in different industries and what's a really great way to do it in your industry. And do you have to do it across all your products or your services or just a bit here and just a bit there, etc. So yeah, let's chat that, Jenni. Let's continue on pricing and money and, getting what you're worth for sure. Because I'm actually not even going to do my because. I'm going to bring it up next time. And we'll use some examples and things and get stuck in because I get asked this question all the time. I love chatting about it and when to increase, how to increase, and how do I even work out pricing in the first place? So, I think.
And if you are going to join us. If you are going to join us next week, have a think about why you want to increase your prices between now and next week. And you come into the next session of this is have a think, what is the reason or your intention behind increasing prices? Is it about worth? Is it about your revenue that you want to get your dream? You've realized your price needs to change in order to reach the dream because you've been undercharging for the last decade and you realize that figure that you had is never coming with what you're doing. So have a think about why, because when we talk next week and if we can do some examples about how you develop your pricing, particularly for consulting bases or service-based industries like you and I, your pricing at the front end determines what your long-term revenue is going to be. And I know that sounds really obvious, but people don't often think about it. They pluck and figure out, I want to charge myself out at $500 an hour, so that's what I'm going to do. And then they go, I only have to work 3 hours a week and then you go, hang on, did you not want to earn a lot of money at the other end or do you not want a large revenue target? And that's okay if it's not. But what you charge and how much you charge and how often you do it does have a massive impact at the other end.
Absolutely. All right, great.
Let's talk about that next week.
This for a year, but let's go with it for another session. So I look forward to chatting with you about that next Friday, 9:15 Australian Eastern Standard Time. And you can join us on Zoom. We're about to close off now and do our live coaching for 15 minutes with the people that we've got here right with us in Zoom room. And of course, you can listen to this as the podcast or on YouTube, or some of you are here with us on Facebook Live. So Jenni, how can people get in touch with you?
So to find us, just head to Instagram or Facebook for @elephantintheroomu. We're also shifting our website to elephantintheroom.au, which will make it much easier for people to find us. I'm very excited about that. So yeah, @elephantintheroomu is the best way to find us. Pop that into Google and all our bits and pieces will come up. But like us, follow us, join our group. We have a great meetup group called People, Purpose, Profit, where we talk about all things about business. And how about you, Kylie? How do people find you?
Jump on the website, hellomedia.team, and there's all the different links in there. So yeah, look forward to connecting with you guys, and look forward to chatting with you more about money next week, Jenni. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.
All right, cool. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.